Hi, Dr. Lewis.
Hello, Carlotte. Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, good. I didn't know if I had the, I was trying to finish grading this one little paper.
Okay.
2 minutes. I'll be through. Okay.
I'm here.
Okay. 11 minutes. How are you, Carlotte?
I'm doing good. My Can you hear my computer?
Can I hear your computer?
Yes.
No.
One of my fans have decided to go.
One of your
So
what?
my computer, the fan in it is
Oh,
going out.
fan. Oh, I can't hear it. I
It-
can't.
It's really loud. So
Oh no. Well, I did not hear
I was
that.
thinking, I don't know if I need to switch.
Nope. Mm-mm.
But if
I
you
don't
don't
hear it.
hear it, maybe.
I hear nothing. I mean, I have more noise in my background. I got birds and cars and police sirens. So I don't think you can hear any of that either, right?
Okay. So I just had to put in the order a computer. Hopefully it'll get here by Friday.
You're buying a new computer?
Yeah, because I got to take this one to the shop. And my only other computer is the work computer. And then my husband has his, and then we have one for the kids, and everybody's using the computer. But I don't have time to wait for them to fix it. So
Gotcha. How old is your computer?
6 years old.
Somebody was asking me about, I don't know if it was my daughter or what, but I don't know what is considered old now for a computer.
I don't either, but it said I need to take it to get service, or I can lose all of my data.
Oh,
Yes. So my husband went and got a jump drive so I could start downloading.
good idea. I just texted Vickie. It's what, 8 minutes to. I always get nervous with these things because and now I'm getting chilly.
It's snowing here, so it is cold.
It's 70 here. I got the air conditioning on. It may be even higher. It might be. I have the air in this house. I woke up last night having to put the air on. That's why I'm cold.
Now I have the heat going. It is
You got the
blasting.
heat. The only thing is, Carlotte, here, I was just saying to, I don't know who I was talking about, right here in New Orleans, I wish the weather would make up its mind, because one day I got the heat on, the next day I have the air on. I'm like, make up your mind. Are you gonna be winter? You're gonna be, what day, what month is it? What season is it?
Well, next week it is supposed to be 70 here.
Well, what happened?
I don't know, but today it is not. It is freezing. I took my kids to school and I had ice sticking onto the window.
Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. Now I'm every minute that goes past, Vickie's not on, I'm worried. I don't have the PowerPoint. I don't know if you have it.
I do. Oh, well, maybe I should actually pull it up. I pulled up my my PowerPoint videos just in case
Good idea.
Couldn't get them to start right away.
Good idea. I don't have anything pulled up. When I spread Vickie's note that she was going to have all the PowerPoint, and I think I have to tell you, I'm totally stressed. It's Mardi Gras. A dear friend was flying into town, was supposed to arrive last night. Plane got canceled. Then she got delayed, couldn't get on. Somebody else is coming on. But anyway, it's been drama. And my daughter's having to drive to Jackson, Mississippi to go pick her up. She came from Colorado and she's just not getting in today. She's supposed to be, anyway. So she's supposed to be in yesterday at 11.
Was she coming from Mardi Gras?
She's coming from Mardi Gras, yeah. But she had her tickets a long time ago.
Oh, wow.
But I guess with the humidity or it was somewhat with the airport, the weather, fog, they had a lot of fog and they just were canceling flights. And I was like, oh my God. So Sarah Pruitt is a host now. Oh, Lord, Vickie is having problems, I guess. Hello, Vickie. I don't know if she's having problems or what, but I'm glad to see her face.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Yeah, I'm hearing
Say it again.
on the news. Oh, she trying to still working.
Hey, we're working on this. How are y'all doing?
Well,
Good,
we're
how are
better
you?
now. We're better now seeing you.
I know, right? I'm
Yeah.
gonna try to do the share screen and make sure this PowerPoint looks right. And then we're gonna, can y'all see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yes.
Then I'm gonna set it up as a, we don't have two screens in here, so we can't do presenter view, so we can look at our notes, and I don't have my notes with me.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna set this up as presenter view. How did we do that? So it's gonna, can y'all see the presenter view?
Not yet.
Yes.
I can't. I only see.
Oh, you can't see it?
I only see. I don't think I need any notes. Yeah, I can't see. I can only see the whole PowerPoint.
Yeah, I don't need to see my notes either.
Oh, so I'm the only one that needs to see the notes, y'all. That's fine.
Probably need to see the notes, Vickie. It's been so
Well, I
much
have them in
drama.
front of me.
Okay, I can make do then if y'all don't want to do it that way. I can just ad lib. Or just go print my pages out real quick. So, okay, so go back and let's just make it regular view. I checked all the links and they all work.
Vickie, are you going to play that song? The first one, only 2 minutes of it, right?
We're gonna play it at the very beginning. It's all set up and the link to it works.
But only 2 minutes because it's a 5-minute song.
I will stop it at 2 minutes.
Okay, after she does that first verse.
Yeah. Now, do y'all want me to do all the moving of the slides, or do you want me to add y'all as co-host?
I'm fine with you. I can just say next slide if you want me to.
That's fine, because I can stand right here. We're in a classroom, so it's a little different. We've got students who will be in the audience, and unfortunately, the university didn't set up the miking for the classrooms the way that we would have hoped, but we've got some mics to go around when they get ready to ask questions. But I have to kind of stand right here because this is the only place the camera shows. And when I'm not here, it's just like that. We can move it. Yeah, we can move it. Oh, there you go. And then everyone will be able to see the slides, and then the folks on the Zoom will also see the slides. And then I've checked all the links and everything worked a minute ago, so we're gonna pray it still works.
Okay.
This swivel, if you need it to go, if you want to stand in front of us, we can turn it that way for you,
I see.
however you want to do it.
Okay, I think for now, we can kind of go now. It's hard to see people in the class.
Yeah.
On the outside. Does it do like that?
Yeah, it'll go up.
How about that? Then I can at least kind of peek around it. Screen, we're working on the screen, y'all. Okay, so I'll do the slide clicking. As y'all are talking, hopefully, you know, I can set it up where you guys, I think I can set it where the speaker view, where the speaker's the only one that's the biggest or something in there. Way to do that, Sarah?
Yes, you right click and pin. Like if Dr. Lewis, you'll scroll over her photo.
It's a different setup.
And then you can do pin and then, or spotlight for everyone. That actually would probably be better.
I'm probably gonna.
Okay.
And then that makes her the speaker at that moment.
Hey,
And they'll still see the slide.
Dr. Lewis, say something.
Hi, good morning.
Okay. And then can I do that same, do I do the same thing with Carlotte?
Yes, you'll right click and. You might have to unpin Dr. Lewis first.
Okay.
Remove spotlights. No. Remove, we can, it'll be removed spotlight next time. And then on her, for Dr. Carlotte.
What?
You can pin her. It is a show spotlight.
I know.
It's kind of odd. You have spotlight.
Well, she was saying the
Did that
lapel.
work for you the other day? Did the lapel work for you the other day?
Oh, here, add a spotlight. So does that mean when they talk, they're bigger?
Yes.
Okay, so I added you both as spotlights, I think, so that when you're speaking, it's,
And then it'll probably be helpful to give Scott the other mic
whoops, I went the wrong
in
way.
case he has,
I'm gonna try this lapel mic, and then you all make sure that we can hear me, okay?
and you got the intro? Yeah. Got pockets or something?
So can you all hear this? Can you hear me
Yes.
talking?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I'm gonna use this then. That way I don't have to walk around with a mic. And then we'll, when people are asking questions, we can use the mic. Okay?
Okay,
All right, we're ready to go. Let's get started.
okay.
Yeah, you're recording. So you're good.
Okay, so I apologize for the folks I'm behind the screen for. We're gonna try to work that out a little bit. I want to do some introductions real quickly. And I'm going to move from the middle, so I apologize to the folks in there, but because I don't like to not see y'all. So I'm Dr. Vickie Harden. I am with the Department of Social Work. I'm our MSW coordinator and associate professor here. And you will be listening to a couple of my very esteemed colleagues that I've been working with for a long time. Dr. Marva Lewis, who's associate professor at Tulane University. And Dr. Lewis, I did a poor job of bringing in your.
If you want to move, yeah.
Bringing in your bio.
No worries, no worries.
So I will tell you that Dr. Lewis has a phenomenal new book out and has written a number of very important articles for our field. And so I would have loved for her to take a moment about that. We also have Dr. Carlotte Lindsey, who is a recent doctor and has just graduated with her doctorate from Tulane University. Dr. Lindsey is very excited about that. It was a long, arduous road. And Dr. Lindsey now works for the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and she can share just a minute. She's also got some really interesting work that she's doing around anti-racism and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we'll, so can I just give you both a moment to kind of share a little bit about yourselves? Would that be okay?
Sure, sure. I'll start out, and again, as I thank Dr. Harden and I thank MTSU for inviting us and doing this work together that builds on each of our interests. My interest is in parent-child relationships, parent-child bonding, and as Dr. Harden referenced, my most recent book, my only book, you all, but my book is it captures and provides tools for social workers using the hair-combing interaction as a tool to strengthen parent-child bonds. The other work I do has to do with healing from the wounding and healing from the trauma of historical trauma of slavery, which led to Dr. Harden and I first coming together around understanding the joy, the resilience that's demonstrated both in the spirituals as well as that the slave narratives. That's the current research we're doing together. So that's all I'll say right now. But I appreciate you all being here this morning during Black History Month. This is great. Thank you.
Dr. Lindsey, can you share?
Oh my goodness, it's my first time being called Dr. Lindsey. And in this type of setting, so I'm very excited. Thank you all for coming to hear our presentation. This work is one I'm very excited about. I'm putting together some continuing education that I hope if you hear about it, that you'll want to join me in the presentation of that. It's going to be about African American history before 1619. So I'm really excited about this journey and this work that Dr. Harden and Dr. Lewis has started. I jumped at the chance to join them because this is very close and dear to my heart. So I'm excited to be here. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. So you all will know we have a lot of folks on Zoom, and then we also have students, several students in the classroom. So I'll be kind of referencing a little bit both ways. And we have one of our students also helping us manage the chat rooms. So I'm thinking we'll walk through kind of the presentation and then do a Q&A at the end might be the best way to do it. Does that sound okay to you all? Okay, so we're going to move forward. Now this is going to be a little different and it is a bit interactive. You'll see as we go, but the first slide, Dr. Lewis, did you want to speak prior to the slide or me just go ahead with the song?
Let me just set up just a bit. The slide that Dr. Harden, this slide, we want you all to hear, especially in this moment of Black history, this moment in time with our country right now, with the announcement today that the war is about to start. We want you all to hear directly from the ancestors. So I would invite you to close your eyes and just listen to the message and words from our ancestors, the enslaved Africans.
Hi, I'm Nicole Hopper from San Diego.
Don't close your eyes yet. We have
I
to
know
go
this
through
is
this.
hard to hear, but it's
There we go.
like a mother like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child.
Millions of people brought from the country of Africa, separated from their home. And here, how did they survive? That's what we want to share with you today. Some of our thoughts, some of our discoveries with our research, in terms of how did this group of people separated, the loss, the tears, the terror. And we are here with you today. So we can go to the next slide.
So yes, Bessie Griffin's rendition certainly resonates with the tragic and horrific truths of slavery and racism experienced by African Americans. But yet in the midst of this painful heritage, there are so many glimmers of light, of hope, joy, peace, and survival. And we as researchers have stopped to ask, how did they get over? So we embarked on this journey of discovery, and we began reviewing the literature such as the slave narratives from the Federal Writers Project of 1936 to 1938. And we came across a published book of a man named Olaudah Equiano, who you see on the screen. Olaudah certainly was one who I'm sure felt like a motherless child. Not only did he tell the story of being stripped away from his family in his book, which was written and published in the late 1700s, but he also shares his loss of being stripped of his native language, his name, and his spiritual practices. He was born the son of a chief elder in his native country called Assoc. Now, Assoc is thought to have been somewhere in the innermost part of Africa, because Olaudah speaks of never having seen the sea until he went on his 6th to 7th month journey to where he was passed along to different slave handlers. And if you can see, Benin is close to the sea. It's the slave coast area. And this is where he was shipped from to the shore of Virginia. And if we look at the slave database, if we could click on that link. Will it come up?
It's up.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you see the slave database?
We don't see it. So I don't know if you have to stop sharing and reshare.
Okay, thank you. I'll do that right now. Give me 1/2 sec.
So it's, she's pulling that up. The slave database will discover that many of those from Olaudah's country were taken into slavery. He identified himself as an Igbo from the Igbo tribe. And like I said, Assoc was somewhere in the middle of the innermost part of Africa. And, Africa is very large, and that was a 6 to 7 month journey that he went on.
Can you see that now? I apologize.
I do see it. Are you able to type in the first part where it says African name?
Yep.
If you could put in YAH and then do the search. What we know about Olaudah's tribe is that the people from his country had the AH or the YAH or IAH in their name. And they named themselves by that because of the God that they served. They called their God Yah, or creator. So as you can see, Olaudah's lineage is right here in this database. And this database, excuse me, was started by researchers in Louisiana. So this is wonderful for us to have for African Americans, if they could go back to plantations. This gives us an additional way to track history, to track roots. Okay, Vickie, you can stop sharing that one and go to the next slide when you're up. So this is wonderful. There's a lot of research right now that African Americans are able to go back and find their roots, and they can look up these databases because the slave manifests, many of them have been well preserved. And so this is just another, as I call a breadcrumb, that you can go back and trace history. So this is wonderful for us to have.
I'll send to Vickie. Let me see her.
I'm having screen share problems. Okay. Am I back? Okay. Sorry, folks.
Thank you, Vickie. So as you see on the screen here, Marcus Garvey. I think that, yes, that slide. He is considered the father of Pan-Africanism. He was an activist and a journalist, and he's been known for this phrase, a people without the knowledge of their past origin and culture. They're like a tree without roots. Now, he did not coin this phrase. It was really coined by the gentleman you see next to him, Charles Seaford. He actually coined the phrase in his teachings of African history and culture, but Marcus Garvey gleaned a lot from him. Now, these two historical figures knew that the root of a tree stores the tree's food and nutrients. It's the lifeline of the tree. So if you look at the picture on the right, you see the picture of the trees. If the roots are destroyed, the oxygen, the water, the nutrients needed for the tree to thrive will diminish and erosion will begin to set in. So as you see, some of the trees are still standing. They're surviving, but clearly they're not thriving. When we consider the US history of enslaved Africans and their descendants, the traditional idea of resiliency to bounce back, it just doesn't seem to adequately capture the journey of enslaved Africans and their descendants. So what are the descendants of slaves bouncing back to without a clear understanding of their roots, their heritage, and their culture? And we can agree that there are descendants of slaves that are thriving, but as a nation of people, like a tree with no roots, they have not thrived, they're surviving. And they're surviving even in the most disastrous, perilous, and eroded conditions. So we as researchers are compelled to redefine resiliency with the hope of properly defining the legacy of their survival. The next slide. So this is what I call the Great Awakening. On January 8th, 2018, former President Donald Trump signed legislation to form the 400 Years of African American History Commission Act. One of the significant factors of this bill is that it identified the countries in which enslaved Africans were captured. Now, this is key because it assisted in providing additional historical documentation for descendants of slaves to further discover their roots. And it supports the travels that we have learned about from Ola Uda. So now we have a discovery through legislation and proclamations and projects like the 1619 Project, which was actually birthed out of the 400 Years of African American History Commission Act. Next slide. It also sparked an awakening for African Americans in African countries. African countries we see are seeking to reclaim their art that was stolen by countries who colonized them. We see it in film. Henry Louis Gates Jr., in collaboration with the PBS, public broadcasting system, developed a 6-part series of African civilizations. And there are historical markers, such as this one, that was erected in the southern region of the US. Now, I have to tell you, this marker that you see on the screen, I lived in Virginia for 26 years, and I'm trying to make sure I can see it. I'm going to read it. Free Blacks of Israel Hill. Just to the west lies Israel Hill, settled in 1810 to 1811 by approximately 90 formerly enslaved persons who received freedom and 350 acres from Judith Randolph under the will of her husband, Richard Randolph, cousin of Thomas Jefferson. These Israelites and other free African Americans worked as farmers, craftspeople, and Appomattox River boatmen, and labored alongside whites for equal wages and defended their rights in court. The family of early settler Hercules White bought and sold real estate in Farmville and joined with white citizens to found the town's First Baptist Church in 1836. Israel Hill remained a vigorous Black community into the 20th century. Now, when you drive down this highway in Virginia, it's just a lot of grassland. But the thing about it is, I drove down this highway for 20 years, saw this marker, visited Farmville, and never stopped to read it. And it wasn't until 2019 that I actually stopped and read this marker. And when I initially saw it, I thought it was the name of a man, but it was the name of the people who lived on this land, Israel Hill. What we find from Ola Uda is that his tribe, for many missionaries and documents, and if you go back to that, we don't have to go back to it, but in the slave database, Hebrew was shortened for Hebrew. So Ola Uda's lineage were considered Israelites. And this is also found further in the documentation in Louisiana on slave history. So I find that very interesting. And they also, they distinguish between Israelites, Black Israelites, and then also African Americans. So that's another road that gives African Americans an opportunity to go back and discover their roots. The next slide. So when we look at the 400-Year Commission Act and what it was designed to do, I've coined it as a move towards peace in the souls of Black folk across the United States. Because these is a group of people, a nation of people who really didn't know their history, didn't know where they came from. All they really have been taught, or we've been taught, is it started somewhere in slavery. But there's so much rich culture and heritage before 1619. So this commission was designed to plan programs to acknowledge the impact that slavery and laws that were enforced on racial discrimination, or to acknowledge the impact that slavery and laws enforced due to racial discrimination and what that impact had on the United States. It was designed to encourage civic, patriotic, historical, educational, artistic, religious, economic organizations to organize and participate in anniversary activities, to assist localities in the commemoration of those activities, and to coordinate public scholarly research. So what this commission was designed to do. And again, out of that, you got projects like the 1619 project. The sad thing is that the commission ended in July of 2021. So they're no longer promoting this idea, but it doesn't stop the awakening that has happened. The next slide. Now, during the passing of the legislation, so much was happening. Countries in Africa were starting a move or campaign for African Americans to come back to their shores. So we can go ahead and press that link. Countries like Ghana, for example.
1/2 teaspoon of this before 10 p.m. and electricity and metabolism by over.
Sorry.
We can see it, Vickie. Okay.
So in Africa, if you may or may not be familiar with this slave castle along the coast of Ghana, it was called the Gate of No Return. So this is the official video that Ghana put out for African Americans to return to their shores. So you see now it's the door of return. Many stars such as Boris Kojo, you might recognize him, have participated in this event.
Should I keep going, Dr. Lindsey, or?
Just a little bit more.
Ma'am.
It's time to come back to the motherland.
We can stop there. So you see there were some famous stars. The video goes on to show more stars. And then it ends with the president of Ghana that made the official call. And actually many senators and House of Representatives, many of Congress were there during that open night. And if you can go on YouTube and you can see the presentations that were made. Nancy Pelosi, so many were there to experience this time. And African Americans giving more testimonies about their experience and looking to discover their roots, even to this day. So there's another link, and we won't show that link, but there's another link, and maybe we can share those later with you if you want to look at those to hear other testimonials from African Americans. But this leads us on a discovery of personal testimonies of this heritage and trying to figure out, where did this resiliency come from? And clearly, it looks like we really need to redefine it. And so this is the journey that we have embarked upon, and we hope that you will continue to listen and be inspired to go on this journey with us. Thank you.
You. So I'll talk for just a minute about this because there's more fun things to discuss later. But one of the things that Dr. Lewis and Dr. Lindsey and I have been working on is this redefinition of this term resiliency, because resiliency and resilience doesn't seem to really fit what we're finding and what we have found in our work. Just as a quick kind of, I guess, historical reference, resiliency really was based on engineering and physics way back in the day. It talks about bouncing back, as Dr. Lindsey referenced. It talks about the stress strain curve and elasticity, regaining a past state of normalcy or strength, recovering from a fault, that systems that continue even when a failure in the system occurs. So they're able to bounce back, okay? I want you to think about that term for a minute. And then as social science started using that term, it actually started early in the 1970s around some work that researchers were doing in Hawaii with children and thinking about what are these ideas of risk and protective factors? What helps a child to overcome adversity? What helps a child or prevents the overcoming of adversity or addressing of adversity? And this idea that we can successfully adapt even in the throes of trauma or adversity. Well, as we started with that definition, and I'm going to share with you a little bit about how we have defined resiliency as we're looking at the narratives of enslaved Africans and really taking this deep dive into the historical perspective. But what we know is that when Africans were brought over and enslaved, what were they bouncing back? We keep saying, oh, they were such resilient people. That means they bounced back from something. And if you are in the throes of slavery, of oppression, you're not bouncing back from anything. You're staying in this state. And so, however, they still continue to strive to move forward and to thrive. And that's what we look at is in the sort of in spite of, rather than in light of, this state of constant oppression, how did they survive and thrive? And how did culture remain such an important thread throughout this thriving that occurred? We don't think resiliency is the right word, though. So we're looking for a new terminology around this. So from a qualitative inquiry perspective, what we do is we're using something called humanistic inquiry. We use attachment theory, and we have looked at some of these concepts of resiliency. Sorry for the little typo there, I just saw that. So for those of you that aren't aware, qualitative analysis really takes a deep dive into meaning. We feel like that's a really important thing for us to do, and we're using existing data. Right now, we're diving into these narratives of enslaved Africans. These are the last living people that had experienced slavery. This occurred in the 1930s. The federal government, you all remember the 1930s, there was depression. They were looking for ways to put people to work. They sent a bunch of folks out to all over, really, the South and some in the Midwest, looking for people who were formerly enslaved. And now these folks are in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, and they were enslaved when they were children and teenagers before Emancipation Proclamation and before they were freed, although many of them talk about how they didn't know they were free for a long time. And we know those stories, right? So our narrative focus is looking at those Federal Writers Project narratives. They're on Library of Congress database, and other people have looked at this data too, from different lenses or different perspectives. We're looking at it from this more strength-based resilience, we'll use the word resiliency today perspective. And again, I also want to state that Dr. Lindsey brought into us some even earlier narratives that were written, and we've also looked at Frederick Douglass and his biographies and autobiographies. So there's a lot of really robust information out there that helps us to at least capture the experiences based on the descriptions of people who were enslaved. This is a super quick thing. I'm not going to belabor, but we wanted to show you a little bit about how we are defining resilience, and this becomes really complex. So we looked at conditions of enslaved Africans, and you can see some of these are called families or units and subunits, emotional, spiritual, mental conditions that were described, environmental conditions, physical, and then trauma and how was it witness trauma, and how was toxic stress experienced. Some of the narratives talk about family members committing suicide, and children and young adults as they were enslaved, remembering those things happening, for example. We also look at family and caregiving relationships. I'm not going to go through the whole detail. The most important one that we're going to talk about today and that we've really been concentrating on is spirituality, because that is sort of a foundation, a root. Remember Dr. Lindsey said some of the roots, if roots aren't nourished, right, the tree dies. This is a very, very important root to the nourishment of what we're still calling right now resiliency, but we're going to figure out something different. So spirituality, we go in and read those narratives and we code them for descriptions of religious experiences in song and other ways. We look at they actually name hymnals and songs that were important to them as children or that were experienced. Amazing Grace is one of the big ones right now that seems to be brought up a lot in the narratives, for example. But we also know that song was used as secret communication. So when enslaved Africans were working in the fields, they would have songs that the white slave owner at the time thought was them discussing or describing a religious experience, but they were actually secret communication about things like meetings they were having, ways that they were coming together and building their social networks. And then there's psychological meaning too that we code for. And then out of that, there's also some things around folklore and culture that we look at. So these are all the different things that we look for in the narratives, but we're going to concentrate a bit today on the spirituality piece, okay? Any question? Well, no, don't. We're not doing questions yet. I forgot. I thought I was in class for a minute. We're going to do questions afterwards, so just hold those questions. So, I think, is that you, Dr. Lewis, or is that still me? I can't remember.
It's okay. I'll take it from here.
Thank you, ma'am.
And one of the things that Dr. Harden, as you were speaking, and Carlotte, as you were speaking, I want to emphasize that I'm a direct descendant of enslaved Africans. We are direct descendants of enslaved Africans, or the oppressors. And what our team represents, which excites me, which brings tears to my eyes, is that we have been working together now almost 4 years or a little bit longer. And we represent what we as a country need to do to unpack the beauty of our African American culture, the beauty of the spiritual joy that's reflected in these songs, such that we're familiar with, that we've heard. But when we think about the practice of mindfulness, when we think about the research that's being done now and the biopsychosocial realm in terms of what are the biological factors of resiliency, what are the psychological factors of resiliency, what are the social factors, breathing, breath work, being connected in a group. We have lots of research on social support theory, but how did these enslaved Africans who were brought from their country, and remember, as Vickie said, these people who were brought over were on average adolescents. They were speaking, I think, 600 and something different languages. They came from different countries, the map that Carlotte showed you. These were not a uniform folks. These were folks representing many different cultural groups, ethnic groups, language groups, but mainly folks who brought over a physical type of a capacity. But the songs that reflect their joy, this is what they have left us. Vickie, I did want you to say, in terms of that methodology, the number of different narratives that we are analyzing. I want you all to understand this is a huge database that we are attempting to understand a little. You can say it now, Sarah. I mean, not Sarah. Sarah Pruitt's name is there, Vickie.
Wonderful person who sets these up, and so I'm not Sarah, but my name is Sarah for today.
I was like, wait, who's that? And it looks like Vickie.
So there are well over 2,000 narratives of enslaved Africans, just in the Federal Writers Project. Fisk University also did a similar piece of work, and there are several hundred there. And even prior to that, we've come across probably 10 to 15 that were very early, written by enslaved Africans, like Frederick Douglass's autobiography, and several others who, in some wonderful way, were able to publish with the help, with some help, their autobiographies during the course of slavery. Frederick Douglass's work was pivotal in helping people understand what he went through as a child and as an adolescent and an adult, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it's well over 2,000. We started with we did a randomized sort of sorting, and we had about 16 that we kind of have started with and really done a deep dive that helped us develop our coding scheme. And so now we're backtracking and trying to go through those others. It's quite a, as you can imagine, quite a laborious process, but every time we look at them, every time I open one up and read something, it just is, it's hard on your heart, but it's important. It makes you really realize how important it is to understand from that perspective. And what I put up here were just some of the examples of how in those narratives, they refer to hymnals or religious experiences and some of those terms that came out of there. just to give you a little bit of a kind of a snippet on that. So I'll be quiet now, Dr. Lewis.
No, you need to be quiet. This is great. If you can go on to that next slide. So why are the narratives so important? Why are we still talking about slavery? As I said, the words that either the enslaved Africans who did not come over speaking English or were not, quote, Christianized at that point. They didn't belong to the Christian religion at that point. They borrowed some of the words they understood and they transformed them into these spirituals that we enjoy to this day. The hymns that were derived from the slave songs, you may recognize as Dr. Harden referenced Amazing Grace. That song was actually written by a white person, but it has been incorporated, it has been sung now by all of us with a meaning. The enslaved Africans recognized what resonated with their particular condition at that time, what they were worried about, what they felt they needed understanding, how they needed to communicate not only to each other, but to their children, to future generations, to the world at large. This is what's happening to us at this point. Go down, Moses, and let my people go. All these different titles that you just saw, if you can go to the next slide. These different titles teach us about what spiritual well-being that the enslaved Africans experienced. Spirituality, when we think about it from a broader perspective, it means the breath of life itself. As Dr. Lindsey showed you, those trees that are so barren of leaves and fruit. But the spirituality we are investigating, we are attempting to understand at a deeper level, it provided that breath of life that led to, and I say the survival of our ancestors, my survival, our survival, what we can learn from those spirituals. What we know, again, when we sing together as humans, we have a sense of connection. We have a sense of being loved. We have a sense of the compassion and the feeling of the humanity of others. If we could go to the next slide. The philosophy that underlies the spirituality is that spiritual connection by John Miptidi, an African philosopher who wrote about African religions. This phrase, I am because we are, and since we are, therefore I am. It speaks to this overarching spiritual connection of humanity, humanity towards others, humanity toward ourselves. We all as a country can learn from this idea that when we are connected as human beings through humanity, we all grow, we thrive, we can put leaves on that trees, we can grow that fruit that needs to be, that will ensure the survival of us all, our country, our families, our individual selves. If we can go to the next slide. This, how we can benefit again from the spirituals, what they have left us, those enslaved Africans, includes not only the spirituals, but the music that we listen to today, gospel, blues, jazz, rhythm and blues, the Motown sound. I'm from Detroit, you all, so for me, the Motown sound is what I grew up listening to. The Memphis sound, you were there in Tennessee, the Memphis blues, all these hip hop. I would say, Carlotte, your generation, but my daughter's generation, our children's generation, all of these songs with their African roots, and many, many researchers who have analyzed African-American music encompasses, they can identify different sounds, different words, different rhythmic patterns that have their roots in African music, That's our cultural heritage that has been shared with us through the centuries of terrorism, through the centuries of pain, through the centuries of disconnection. And we are arguing for, as Dr. Lindsey and Dr. Harden has shared with you, how we can benefit from the spiritual joy that's connected with these spirituals. If we can go to the next slide. I want you just to think about your own. I want you to share a title in the chat box of a African-American spiritual, jazz, blues, a song that moves you emotionally and you felt a sense of connection to humanity, or just connected humanity. I want you to reflect, think about, or just what comes to mind as you saw the word jazz, a favorite jazz song, a favorite blues song, a favorite hip hop song. For me, that song that you heard at the outset, Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child. That song brings tears to my eyes. However many times I hear it, and I didn't understand it at first until I began to delve more deeply into my African-American heritage. I used to think that slavery was just, oh yeah, they picked cotton and that was all I knew about slavery. The more I delved deeply into who were those slaves, how did they survive, that song touches me at a deep, deep emotional level. So that would be the song I put in the chat box. Think about other songs, blues song. I have to tell you, B.B. King is one of my favorite blues artists. Each of those different types of song, and there's hundreds of songs that we may know, we may have been dancing to with the hip hop, with the rhythm and blues. Of course, back to Motown, you know, we're singing, I'm singing. But these songs, I see in the chat box some Precious Lord, Take My Hand, the jazz, the blues, the hip hop songs. Just put the songs that you remember, that you may be dancing to right now, that you may be listening to when you're cleaning up your house, as you're writing out your papers, your students, some of you are students in here. Those songs that you recall, rap, all these songs that have their origins in these, what we used to call Negro spirituals, are still helping us to survive today. Wade in the water, I see them, you know, keep your head to the sky, earth, wind, and fire, yes, I love it. I Who Have Nothing, Unforgettable, yes. Rhythm and Blues with Natalie Cole. Just share with us in that chat box. I'm going to go on to that next slide. But you can do this on your own. And I want us now to share as a group the message from the enslaved Africans that represent resilience writ large. The resilience that have helped our survival over these last 400 years of enslavement, of Jim Crow, separation, segregation, the most recent, the police brutality. These songs and the act of singing these songs together, and I'm going to ask all of you all to share with us, you can unmute your mics, and if you're there in the classroom, I want you to stand up, and I want us to clap our hands and do what the enslaved Africans did. I'm going to lead us in this verse of this song. This little light of mine. You talk about resilience, look at these words.
For those of you who don't have your cameras on, feel free to show us yourselves, and Dr. Lewis is going to lead us in this song. Let's take a moment, because it's
yes,
very powerful, and she has an amazing voice, so you will.
No. I'm not. Okay, everyone, if we're ready, we're going to unmute those mics, and we're going to share together the way that our enslaved Africans ancestors share together. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it
Let it
shine.
shine, let it
Let it
shine,
shine. Let it
let it
shine.
shine.
Yay. Okay. We have a little delay there, but that's okay. When we're in a room together, we can walk around singing that song in a circle. We can shout that song. We can remind when we're washing the dishes, sing that song. As you're taking a bath, sing that song. Because those words give us hope. They give us joy. They give us a sense of connection with the past as well as the future. If we could go to that next slide. I want to emphasize and say thank you to my researchers here, Dr. Harden, Dr. Lindsey. We are a direct descendant of enslaved Africans and a direct descendant of the oppressor. We're Black, we're white, and we are working together. I can't tell you what a journey it's been, and a pleasure, a hard journey too, as we've learned from each other what we know, what we don't know. This has been a process of discovery, each of us, as we have done this work together. And I want to just say thank you to my colleagues here for helping me, bring those to remove those cataracts from my eyes about different experiences that I didn't know. Dr. Lindsey's curricula is so exciting. I look on her as a younger generation. She's going to keep this work moving forward when Dr. Harden and I are out in our rocking chairs.
Right.
But each time we share our individual stories about discovery and learning in this research. You don't think about research as a process of discovery, but it's a process of wonderful discovery. I'm going to end there and let Dr. Lindsey, Dr. Harden share their last thoughts.
Dr. Lindsey, did you have something you'd like to share?
Every time we have these discussions or about this discovery, I'm excited because I'm learning about my history, and I am also able to share it with you today. So that makes me even more excited. So thank you again for coming and joining us with this discovery that we're on. We appreciate it.
And from my perspective, Dr. Lewis said something about cataracts and opening up her eyes. I frankly feel like I was a fairly, educated person around some of this, but I had blinders on that I never knew existed. And I think many of us do walk around thinking that we know what it must be like, or we know something about our history from this perspective, and we don't. It is, and you all have heard me say 1,000 times, I can't believe I didn't learn this in school. When we have a discussion about something, it's appalling, frankly, about the things that we don't know. And you all, what I want to say is just drop your fear. It's okay. And learn together about some of this. We need to know this so that we can obviously prevent it, but also honor one another and the path that we have all walked and continue to walk.
Yes.
I hid for a while, and Carlotte called me out. Dr. Lindsey called me out in a really sweet way. I said, no, my people are Cherokee and Swedish. And she said, Vickie, the Swedes had slaves. And I said, okay, shut up. I don't want to hear, blah, blah, blah. But I had to own. We all need to just own it. I didn't die when I owned it. It's okay. Own it, live it, and live together with this. And let's learn together. And I think that's what we're hoping.
Yes.
But we also want to bring out, like with the spirituals, there's so many of them are rooted in people working on plantations and finding ways to survive that day, that moment, that hour, and understanding that too. And that's been really a beautiful process for us. So that's all I guess I'll say today. Because we have great conversations when we're doing this too. We tend to talk more than we discuss our research sometimes because we're just coming up with so many things. But we do want to open it up for question and answer. So in the room or on chat, do you have any questions or thoughts or things you want to share before we wrap up today? Anybody in here?
The only question I have is where do I find more research on secret messages that were in the
Yeah,
spiritual,
so-
that I found that interesting.
Yeah, so there's a couple of books that outline some of that history, and Dr. Lindsey and Dr. Lewis may have more information, but we use, there's one comprehensive book that a fellow named Fisher did slave narratives early on. He didn't look for particular things, but he just did a very, I guess you could say, cross-cutting view. And in his work, we found that information, but there's also a lot of historical documents about that. Dr. Lewis, or Lindsey, did you have something to add about that?
Yes, Carla, you can go ahead. I'm typing in the chat box a couple of different resources, and we have, I mean, there's, you have to put the one, Vickie, I'm putting the Homicide Research Center here at Tulane University, and then some others.
Okay.
But we can, I can't talk and type, y'all, you can see that. But there's Weight in the Water is that, I just put that book down in there because it's about the spirituals. There's a ton of resources, and I think we're gonna have a resource, a section for resource that we can then share with you all, anyone who connects us with specific resources. We've already started putting together all the resources. Carla, you wanna you already shared some of your resources.
Yes, and I was gonna say, we have so many resources that we maybe we can provide that to Dr. Harden, and then she could share it.
Absolutely, happy to do that.
Mhm.
Yeah, we have mined lots and lots of books. There are books in my office that I've barely gotten through. There's a lot of really important information out there that doesn't get brought into our mainstream educational system that should be. So yes, there's a lot of information about how that happened and then how the meetings occurred. They would, go off in the woods and meet and talk about what feels right, what feels wrong. And as far as like what they're being taught and told, and describing, a lot of the discussions were around like ministers and preachers that would come onto the plantation, invited by the slave owner, and they are only told certain things. And there was actually even there is a slave Bible where the religious groups took out our Bible so that the slaves couldn't see things like people being, the Jews being freed. All that was gone. Anything about Moses. So there were whole parts to the Bible that were taken out, and they were handed a book that they thought was the Bible, but it was lots of anything about how humanity should be, anything about how slavery is wrong, all those things, anything in the Bible about that was gone. So they couldn't, so that's the type of religious experiences they were having. But even out of that, they were able to really grow some strength around their own sense of religiosity and spirituality, much of which they brought with them and was carried down through generations. And I'm speaking too much because you all know more about that.
No. We only have about 2 minutes, but I want to go back to that, what Carlotte started out with, for those of you who are on the call as enslaved Africans, to take your name. The naming practices that happened after Reconstruction were reflects how those enslaved Africans were trying to reconnect themselves with some of those folks that they had been separated from. And our names that we have today, my father's name, the name he was given, Ward Lewis, his nickname was Dugga. And we found out that the word Dugga, which we grew up saying, my uncles and aunts called him Dugga, his nickname was actually an African word. We didn't know that was an African word until, it was, one of my nieces, nephews came across it. But there's ways we can connect to our history that we're not even aware of. So I just want to say that there's a lot of resources we can mine, and the joy that comes from connection, being connected to who we are, who you are, who I am. that gives me the pleasure. So thank you so much for sharing this time with you all today. You can see we're all excited about it because through our humanity, we can heal our nation.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Beautiful way to end today, Dr. Lewis. Thank you so much. And appreciate you all taking the time. I know you're both very busy, and just thanks for everyone being on the call. And we're gonna, I guess, end her up right now. So thanks a bunch, everybody.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.